Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee of March 8th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. First item of business, approval of minutes, draft minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 Finance meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move approval. I move approval.
Approval by Alder Wheeler. Discussion. Yes, Alder Gerhardt, go ahead.
Thank you. I just, very small correction on page 2. Bulky is spelled wrong for item 6C.
Okay. Misty, is it?
I will fix that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Which item was it? I'm sorry.
6C.
6C. Excellent. Jim, I assume friendly amendment to approve as amended?
Yes.
Very good. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Item 3, do we have anybody registered for public appearances, non-agenda items? We do not. Right, thank you. Moving on, the item 4, or number 4, Finance Director Report. Finance Department Annual Report as of December 31st, 2021. Our Director of Finance is here, Misty Dodge. You have the floor.
Thank you. So included in the packet is the annual report that the Finance Department submitted. So all of the departments are expected to file a report each year, and then they're posted out on the website. Wanted to share this in the packet just so you guys saw it, brought your attention to it. I won't go through it in a lot of specificness. Wanted to highlight kind of the special projects that we had. So that'd be the Arpa funding, which I know you are all very aware of. We had a lot of staff transitions during 2021. We did that stormwater rate increase, that 38%. That took some outreach. We changed the purchasing policy. We're continuing to refine the town of Madison impacts, and then implementing the ACH blocks and filters. So some special projects. Then it also has a lot of charts about kind of our transaction level that we process in the finance department. One of the weird things I'd point out is that our utility customers are going up exponentially, which is not surprising because of all the growth that's happening here. But our actual number of receipts for utilities is down. So last year we thought that made sense because COVID, people weren't paying as timely. This year it seems that COVID must continue to have an impact on the number of receipts. And then we also, the mail caused some problem for us in that third quarter. So people were paying third and fourth quarter together. In a lot of situations. So something just to kind of keep an eye on. It surprised me a little as we were putting together the reports. But in general, everything, more tax bills are being issued. We have a higher number of employees, that type of a thing. So unless there's questions, I guess I would leave it there. Okay. Excellent. Only other thing to report is we are quickly approaching audit. They are here next week, which means that our numbers have to be final by the end of this week. So a little preoccupied trying to get all of that cleaned up. Once the auditors are gone, then I will submit the final, close to final 2021 numbers for you guys so that you have them. So still don't have them yet, trying to wrap it all up. That is it.
I believe that we will see those numbers, and once they wrap everything up.
Yeah, so the audit is next week,
right,
and then I'm off for the following 2 weeks, so it won't be until April before I'd get them to you. A lot of times they'll share with me if they have any corrections that they found. They'll share those before they leave, but it's possible that they wouldn't find, or they wouldn't share those until after it was reviewed by the partner. So in general, we don't have many corrections, if any, but I want to make sure that those are incorporated before I provide you final numbers.
Okay, so sometime probably before end of first quarter.
No, probably April.
Okay, April. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Moving on. Was there anything else that you'd like to speak to?
Nope, that is it.
Okay, thank you, Misty. Moving on to the next item, review of bills. 5A, detailed review of checks for $10,000 and above, February 16th to the 28th, 2022, totaling $131,524.35. Is there discussion? All right, hearing none. We will move on to item 5B, detailed review of all checks issued. Checks number 123169 through 123229 for the period of February 16th to the 28th, 2022, totaling $296,416.13. Is there discussion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, we do have a member of the public that's here to register something on this item, I believe.
Correct. And for proper protocol, I may just call upon them?
Yep.
Okay.
And then remind that there's 3 minutes.
Okay, very good. We have Patrick Cheney that would like to speak to item 5B, bills under $10,000. Is that correct, Mr. Cheney?
Patrick Cheney. I'm here to comment on an invoice that is connected to an item that was on the Park Commission agenda, where I'm a member, and I'm at the address next door to the address on this invoice. The invoice is for Bassett Tree Care, number 90373. It's on page 21, bottom one on that page in your packet, and it's for $350. My comments are, this was sloppy paperwork from this company. There are several errors and confusing points on here, and I suggest getting an explanation from Bassett to correct this. The first version they sent out had sales tax, and everybody knows government is exempt from sales tax. The staff had to correct that, so kind of set that part aside. The second version, which came just a few days later, was still 4 months after the actual inspection assessment date of the work that they did on October 12th. This is a copy of the report right here that has the date of their work on October 12th, which then when the invoice came in February, it's in the next calendar year. So it's listed on the invoice that the work was on February 2nd of 2022. So there's only a vague connection of the inspection tree assessment that was done and this invoice at this address. Really, just of this address is the only way to connect them, but 2 different work dates. Now, Misty has notes on file already, and that was it. The whole thing caused extra work by the staff to kind of straighten this out for what is on record right now in finance. I am suggesting that this committee have either the park staff, and that would be the best one, or the finance staff, obtain an explanation from this vendor to clarify this invoice was for a tree assessment inspection on October 12th of 2021, verify that no additional work was done on February 2nd or any other date in 2022, explain the 4-month delay in invoicing, acknowledge that the city is tax exempt, so they don't have to do that and straighten it out again. And they could also apologize for the bad paperwork and mention that if they ever expect to do business with the city again for the future. Any questions?
I do not have any questions. Questions from the committee?
Just clarification, so we have not had any contact with this company? This is yet?
We have.
Oh.
So they did submit the revised invoice to take sales tax off. That's actually somewhat common, so we have that happen frequently enough. And the delay between when the work is done and it crossing years, that happens relatively frequently as well. There is the piece that he brought up where the invoice has a report date different than the actual report date, but we did note that in our software. The invoice number is recorded in our accounting software. I feel like on our side, the documentation is there that's needed. And I don't have hesitations about the paperwork that they submitted in general.
Additional questions? Patrick? Anything further at this point?
I just brought it up because it looks like the possibility of double billing since the inspection was in October. The invoice said that the work was February 2nd. They're so disjointed. It looked like, to me, as an observer, they could send another invoice in. I'm sure Misty would catch it. But it just looked bad, sloppy paperwork.
Sure.
So straighten them out.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that to our
Thank you for bringing it to our attention, yes. Very good. Okay. Moving on to item 5C, detailed review of ACH payments for $10,000 and above for the period of February 16th through the 28th, 2022, totaling $450,618.63. Questions from the committee? Discussion. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next. Item 5D, detailed review of all ACH payments for the period of February 16th through the 28th, 2022, totaling $470,386.23. Questions or discussion from the committee? Hearing none. That concludes the review of bills. We will move on to item 6, action items. First action item, we will have a motion to approve resolution R-28-22, purchase 2022 Ford Escape Hybrid.
I move approval.
Okay, we have an approval made by Alder Gerhardt. Misty, would you like to speak to this item?
I will, and then Scott's here if there's questions as well. Ultimately, this is a replacement of a vehicle for the Recreation Department. So this was one that was placed on hold last year because of the different budgetary concerns with COVID. That money was reinstated, and so now we'd like to move forward with the purchase. It is a hybrid, which is why there are some smiles on the committee. It is under state contract, and it is within budget.
I always like to hear that within budget. Scott, would you like to weigh in on this particular resolution as well?
Only if there's questions. I will report that this replacement vehicle will be utilized by the Recreation Department to transport recreational staff from site to site for summer programs. We are certainly going to be using it during the summer recreation season, but it will be available for other departments for use outside of that Recreation Department season. So,
very good. Discussion from the committee. I see a bright, smile over here. Go ahead, Alder Gerhardt.
Thank you. Scott, as you can imagine, I'm really delighted by this. Can I ask also in terms of the use of the vehicle, is this all local travel, or is there any situation where that vehicle would travel long distances?
Typically, Gabriella, it's for local travel, but that's not to say, like I say, the summer staff during the summer generally don't commute outside of the city, if you would, from park to park. But certainly it is, as I mentioned, available for conferences and those kinds of things outside of that Recreation Department season, which is, June and in July.
Great. And I thank you for stepping up and getting a hybrid vehicle. I really appreciate it, but I'm going to plant a little seed for the future. When we replace this vehicle in the future, other vehicles like this where they're not heavy, they're not hauling vehicles like you would see in the Parks Department, or they're not traveling long distances, I love a consideration of an electric vehicle, because this seems like the type of vehicle that could be electric, and I will start poking at that in the future. So just
well, I will report to you, Gabriella, that credit goes to Joran, the park maintenance supervisor, and he's really kind of keeping an eye on work vehicles that in theory could be electric or hybrid. We're just not seeing that many options at this point, so he's definitely keeping an eye out for that replacement.
Awesome.
Okay, further discussion.
Well, this is pretty timely, actually, not only the environmental concerns, but we actually, at the Board of Public Works, we mentioned the gas mileage, and you're going to more than double the gas mileage with this vehicle as opposed to the 2003 Ford Explorer, which at that point got 15 in the city, 21 on the highway. I'm pretty sure it's probably a lot worse since it's so old now, so this is pretty timely.
Very good. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. We'll move on to action item 6B. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R-29-22, approval for police department portable/mobile radio upgrade?
I move approval.
Motion to approve made by Alder Wheeler. And Misty, will you start the conversation, and we'll hand it off to Chief Morales, I believe?
Exactly. So we'd actually like to do both conversations at the same time, because the police and fire departments worked really well together to make sure that we were getting a project that worked for both. So they're both here to answer any questions. And then the thoughts would be we'd have the discussion under this one, and then when we get to the next agenda item, it'll be basically the same, but the other piece of it. So with that, I'll let Chief Morales start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start off with the radios. Fitchburg Police Department, we have been using the radios for over 10 years. There is a lifespan on the radios. Are they currently working? Absolutely, they're currently working. The radio that I have here is one of them. Keep in mind, this one is not beat up because this is the radio that belongs to the Chief of Police. And we are not out there running around dropping our radios. But a way you can relate to the wear and tear that goes on a radio is very similar to a cell phone. How often do you own your personal cell phone? You drop it, you use it constantly. The radio is a lifeline for not only police, but fire and other areas within the Fitchburg, city of Fitchburg, where we have to communicate with one another, and we're not out near each other to communicate. It's, in a sense, a lifeline, and it can become an officer safety issue if they're not working properly to be able to communicate in radio for assistance or radio for information or get information as you're dealing with a call. Now, it comes in pieces. There is the mic. There is the actual radio. You have your holder, and there's internal parts in this that will determine what department or what frequency different agencies are going to use, or what band you're going to be using. Chief Pomawakar discussed those bands in more detail. They went into the research for this particular radio. Fitchburg Police has been using Motorola. When you think of a cell phone, you have the Android version and you have the iPhone version. You can have different companies on the Android version like Samsung. I don't know if Nokia is still in business, but in reality, there's not that many different cell phone companies. The same is true for radios. You're going to either have Kenwood, Harris, or Motorola. If you were to consider changing or going from Motorola to one of the other phone radio bands, it would be quite expensive, and you would go through a phase that will take years to identify the dead spots, bring different towers. Just think of a cell phone. There's Sprint towers, there's Verizon towers, there's AT&T towers, and that becomes complicated in so much as that you have dropped calls. If you were to do that in exchange with radios and not stay consistent or uniform, those are things that happen in a similar fashion with the radios that you use. I would suggest that we use the same radios as the same company, type of radio, Motorola, that being the band that we're using, to be consistent and be less costly. And at the end of the day, there haven't been any problems with them in the 10 years that we've had them. So if it's not broken, why fix it? The Fitchburg Police Department is looking at radios simply to replace them due to the age and the wear and tear that goes with them. As far as more details on the selection and why we want to be uniform with the fire department, I'll let Chief Pomawakar continue with this conversation.
So first of all, I would like to address Alder Gebhardt and tell you these are all electric radios. But we did a couple of different things. We knew that the lifespan for our radios was coming to an end. Between 10, 12, 15 years is what we had our portables for, and some of our mobiles were even longer than that. And over the course of time, technology changes. And one of those things that has adapted over the past 10 years is frequency use. So we're looking at a dual band radio that allows us to function across frequency platforms. So we will work better with agencies like Madison, state agencies, federal agencies. So when those types of communications need to happen, we don't have to look for new equipment because we already have them. And actually that's the direction that the industry is moving, is trying to have that interoperability when it comes to communication, especially on escalating incidents. The other thing that we did as a fire department, because we didn't have Motorola radios, we had actually 3 different portable radios, which creates its own set of problems in the sense that now you have a variety of different things that you use from radio to radio, different chargers, different batteries, different cables to do the programming. So by working with the police department, identifying a specification that allows us to use similar, if not the same equipment, when we go to an incident where we're both operating, especially out of a vehicle like our command post, we have one charging unit that can support all radios on scene, police, fire, EMS. The other things that I would just point to is there's a couple of other things that went into our decision. One of them really had to do with some of the ancillary attachments, things like microphones that were specific to Motorola versus the other varieties that we tried that used second-party equipment, which can be problematic. We wanted to make sure that our warranty was solid so that if we run into problems, especially within the first 1 to 2 years, we have the ability to get that addressed. The user test, just for your information, we monitored radio transmission, radio reception, ease of use, and hand-to-mic design. Those are the things that typically we have the biggest, those are the things that impact communication the most. And out of all of those, our user test identified Motorola as being the preferred piece of equipment. So then what we did is we worked with getting best pricing. The state bid identified Motorola Source or Solutions as the state bid, and Motorola Solutions uses Baycom in this area, and that's how we received the sole source quote that you have in front of you.
Very good, thank you. Further comment, Misty, before we open it up? I'll start out with a question. I noticed the difference dollar amounts between various departments, and I'm sure it's something very simple, but is it because of the number of radios that each department's ordering? I mean, police is higher than the fire department. There's a significant dollar differences.
There's one item that the police department radio has to have that ours doesn't, and that has to do with encryption.
Okay.
There is a select channel that they use that needs to be encrypted where ours does not.
Okay, all right, simple enough, thank you. Additional questions? Alder Wheeler.
Yes, what's going to happen to the old radios? Are we going to get any money for those?
We're going to try to get money for them. I'm not really anticipating a whole lot. We might keep some just as backup or to use in support roles that aren't necessary for emergency operations where communication is essential. We might use it for something like a support worker who's just going to a site to do a report on something that they see, but nothing that would be needed for emergency services. So we're looking at that as an option as well as putting some of them into surplus.
Okay, thanks.
Do you want one?
No.
No, that's right. The answer was no.
All right. Yes, Alder Gerhardt, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions. The fire department has 2 separate invoices. It looks like there's something else that's needed for the fire department. It was like a programming cables. What? Can you talk about that? Yeah,
so there's the programming cables and the installation that we identified. We don't necessarily work directly with a radio shop, similar to some of the things that the police department has done. We're working that out, but the programming cables can be shared from department to department. So there are efficiencies built into a common spec, and that's one of them where we both can use the same cables.
So those will probably be shared between the departments?
No doubt. Just about everything other than the radios issued to the department, all of the ancillary stuff can be moved back and forth depending on need.
Great. And then a little question about I mean, I want to acknowledge you for working together to get this bigger discount. That's fantastic and lovely to see, and really appreciated all the detailed documentation here. It's really helpful for understanding. I saw that the invoice said that it was a 4.99% discount because of the size. Is that kind of at the high end of what they would do for a large quantity discount, or do we like max out the quantity discount?
Yeah, so a lot of times when you're dealing with MSRP and you're already working with a state bid, they're taking into consideration some of those price efficiencies that are built into a low bid that allowed them to identify as the state bid. So they have a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot. So they do what they can, and the larger the order, the more latitude they have. Although this is a considerable order, I mean, it's an investment. You can imagine that we're actually a smaller department as compared to some. So it's a matter of making sure that if we move forward with purchases like this in the future, we try to maximize the number that we're buying at one time.
Great. And is there any opportunity for, because, I'm sorry, remind me of the police, the shared information network, the MPSIS, is that it? Okay. Is there any opportunities to pool purchases with other municipalities since we already have a collaboration with them?
We could, if I can answer that, we could do that, but depends on what the shelf life is on their radios. I know that ours are over 10 years old. They could have made a purchase a year or two ago. Don't know. I'm not sure, but I will follow up on that with you and find out.
It might just be interesting to keep in the back of the mind for, maybe probably not 10 years down the road, but
However, through our county communications, one thing we do want uniform is that the different police agencies are able to communicate in the event that an emergency occurred, and we are able to do that here in Dane County.
Great.
And I can tell you from the Dane County Fire Chiefs, the announcement had been made for the past 6 months if anybody was interested in getting in on this group purchase. Okay. So we do make those announcements in advance of the purchase, trying to get more people to get on to the bid.
That's great. Okay. Love to hear that.
And it may have been stated earlier, but since this was a 10, 12-year investment, will that continue with this purchase as well? I mean, is that generally the
So that's one thing that Misty is working on right now, and we'll work on together, is to identify what's going to be needed 10 years from now and amortize that out so that we have a budget that continuously invests into the replacement of these radios.
The only reason I ask is, as we all know from cell phones, technology changes so quickly, and I wasn't sure if it was, are we looking at, this is a significant dollar amount between the two departments, so is this a 2-year, 8-year, that's where it's right?
10-year is what we're looking at.
Yes.
10-year, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
10 years.
Thank you. Additional questions, discussion? Hearing none. We'll place the motion before us to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carries. And we will move on to the next resolution, which is very similar.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-30-22, approval for Fire Department portable mobile radio upgrade?
I move approval.
Motion made by Alder Gerhardt. Additional discussion, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much, Chiefs. Do appreciate your time. Yep, have a good evening. True. All right, on to the next resolution, which is action item 6D. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-32-22, approving inclusive playground pathwork?
I have a procedural question here.
Okay.
If I can. So on this, Board of Public Works basically had an amendment to take out the second part, $75,000. So does that have to be included now in this motion also?
So there's 2 ways we can do it. One is you could move approval consistent with Board of Public Works recommendation, or you could move approval and then this body could do an amendment to the resolution similar to what Board of Public Works did, and then approve it at the end. So either either way. I guess it depends on if the committee's planning to do the same thing or not.
Okay.
But we really, we should have a motion on the floor before we start discussion.
Okay, great. I move approval.
Okay. Motion to approve made by Alder Wheeler. And Misty, do you want to kick this off, and then we turn it over to Scott since he's with us?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
So the bulk of this is the approval of the contract for the playground Pathwork. We'll let Scott kind of talk about that piece. Just wanted to mention, though, too, there are 2 budget amendments associated with this. The first one is $50,000 to be funded by additional park fees, which we do have in hand. That would basically complete the project as currently planned. There's also a second budget amendment that's in there. That's kind of what Jim alluded to. It's another $75,000 paid for by park fees. And if that is approved by council, it would be to install a fence around the playground. So I'll let kind of Scott talk about the rest of the project part, but wanted to at least mention that those budget amendments are included in there too.
Go ahead, Scott. You have the floor.
Well, and maybe an additional, to Jim Alder Wheeler's comment, the Park Commission also recommended approval of the same whereas clause for the fence. So they're also in agreement that the fence could be excluded from this project. And what we did do is we did bid the project. We received 2 bids, with the low bid being $41,435. I will note that included in this project, Joran also bid the installation of the drinking fountain, which Alder Arata Frada added in a separate CIP amendment. So to summarize, this work will include the concrete apron that will go around the port-in-place portion of the playground, and then actually the blacktop paths will, one will connect the playground to the splash pad, and then another connection will go from the inclusive playground south to the existing path. And actually, Bill Belke was kind enough to put together an exhibit, and Misty is right on cue, and I appreciate that, Misty. To give you an idea of the location, and the teal or the green, that's where the port-in-place surfacing will be. The gray is going to be the concrete apron, which is included in the project. And then the path that will come from the north to the inclusive playground and then go to the east to the splash pad, along with the path that will go from the southern end of the inclusive playground to the path is all included in this work. And we're really, the idea is the playground is ordered and in storage. We've got the inclusive or the port-in-place contractor all ready to go, and actually that contractor is going to be the installer of the playground. And along with this work, our goal is to get this all built and installed prior to the opening of the splash pad on Memorial Day weekend. So I'm certainly available to ask or answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, discussion from the committee. Alder Wheeler, go ahead.
Scott, could you go into a little bit more depth about what the fencing will do, what it's for?
Well, in actually, when we, in partnership with Communication Innovation, they were our design partners, and their clients are going to be the clients that will be utilizing this facility. And early on, they suggested that we did place a fence on the exterior of the facility, but Alder Arata Frada actually shared with us at the Park Commission that she had reached out to them, and that they actually feel that the fence at this point is not needed. So that's kind of what do I want to say, the explanation about the history of the fence.
So the fence was not in the original scope of the project?
It was.
Oh, it was?
It was, yep. And we actually, it was, but like I say, Julia reported at the Park Commission that she had spoken with Communication Innovation, and they felt that the fence wasn't needed, so they did change their thought on that. So that was the rationale between Julia's amendment to the resolution.
Okay. Let me switch for a moment to the 50,000. Will the 50,000 wrap up the project, or is this just another portion of the project?
Well, from my perspective, this is all part of a partnership with the Optimist Club, and in my eyes, this will finish the project from the city's perspective and commitment, and I'm certain that once we get this facility built, it's really going to help the Optimist Club. There are some, shade structures and landscaping and those kinds of finishes that I know they're interested in trying to get some funds for to finish the project. But with this work, we're going to be able to, as I mentioned, get it built and then have the public be able to use it, first thing after Memorial Day.
Oh, very good. So after this portion, the playground can be used. It will be open. It's just that the additional matching dollars from the Optimist will enhance it further, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And there is a little bit of additional dollars in this $50,000 ask. We're thinking of benches, just those smaller site amenity items that we definitely need to have in there at this point. So this will cover those purchases.
Very good. Additional discussion? Yes, Alder Earhart, go ahead.
Well, given the fact that Parks and Public Works are both in agreement, I'll make a motion to remove the $75,000 from the resolution.
Very good. And with that, Misty, we would vote on the amendment then?
Yep, and just for complete clarity, so the referral sheet says that Parks remove the whereas clause. What you're actually removing is that last be it further resolved clause. That is the budget amendment language for the $75,000. So the top of that second page, that's the clause that's being removed.
Okay, so I'm not looking at the whereas, but I mean, we would vote on this particular portion and then on the amendment itself, or the resolution itself then?
Exactly.
Okay. So with that, those in favor of the amendment that's before us the moment signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. The amendment carries. Then we will move on to the actual resolution itself. Those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 The motion carries. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Oh,
I have one more question for Scott, if that's possible, or should we wait till council?
sure. I don't see.
Yep.
It's ultimately up to you as chair.
Yeah. No. Go ahead, Alder.
Thank you. It just occurred to me in terms of a safety issue, since there won't be a fence, there is a project going in right behind that. The lot 53 and 54 is going to be, construction should start sometime in the spring. And since that's also when the playground will be finished, it seems like we should maybe work with the developer to make sure that there is safety in place so that these kids are not running into the construction zone. And I don't know if that's above and beyond what would normally be due for a site, but given the nature of the playground, it seems like we should start thinking about that now.
And actually, Gabriella, to the west of this site, there is a row of evergreens which will separate the, lot 53 and lot 54 from the playground. So we kind of have a natural barrier at this point, but certainly we can look at additional.
I guess I'm more concerned about kids like running off the playground into a construction zone. I mean, because the type of child that's using this has different abilities, differently abled. I don't know. I just feel like more than maybe other types of parks, we might want to protect this from the construct. I just would like us to start thinking about that. I don't know what.
I'm guessing the construction, you're concerned about during the construction phase. They'll probably have a
Yes.
fence around the construction to begin with, generally.
Yeah.
So.
But maybe they should be aware that this is the park is so close, and I don't know. And I can talk to the developers too. That's in my district, but it just strikes me as something that we should be maybe have it on our radar.
Okay, very good. Moving on. To the next action item, which is action item 6E. Motion to approve resolution R-35-22, amending the 2022 budget for various funds, the 2021 carryovers.
I move approval.
Motion to approval made by Alder Gerhart. Misty, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
This is an annual item. The guidelines are included in the packet on what the criteria are in order for a project to be eligible even to be considered for this carryover resolution. The short of it is these are projects that were specifically budgeted in 2021 for unique circumstances. That project was not able to be completed during 2021, and so staff is requesting to be able to complete that project in 2022 instead, without having to absorb it within their 2022 budget. So there's a list of them all that are recommended from the Finance Committee or the Finance Department based on meeting those criteria. So we would recommend the approval of the items in that green column. It is a fairly high dollar amount, but keep in mind this would include all of those multi-year capital projects. So you think of Fish Hatchery Road, for example, that covered multiple years. We budget for it in year one, and then we have to carry that over the multiple years that the construction occurs. So while it is a large dollar amount, it's not surprising, and that's kind of expected considering the nature of our capital projects.
Very good. You mentioned in the items that are in green. This is from the entire spreadsheet that's in the packet, correct?
Correct. So all of the pages, that green column is what's recommended.
Yeah, you and I spoke of this yesterday. I just wanted to make certain. Okay. Other questions from the committee? Okay. Get back to where I was. Hearing none, we'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor of supporting the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, moving on to action item 6F. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R-36-22, terminating tax incremental district number 6?
I move approval.
Okay, approval made by Alder Wheeler and Misty.
Yes, so I feel like we've talked about this TID 6 closure at every meeting that we've had for the last several. So this is the last stage as far as council is concerned. So this is the real and true closure of the district. The intention is to close it by April 15th so that it counts as this year's closure, which means that that housing fund that you approved a couple meetings back, that will all occur. The TID will close, and then all that value that is currently in the TID will go on to the general roll. We'll get the levy limit adjustment, and then all else equal, the tax rate would drop because we have more property now that are contributing towards our general operating budget. So last stage in the process, once this is approved, assuming it's approved, I have to file with the Department of Revenue confirming what our reporting requirements are. We will then go through a final audit, an external audit with our CPA firm to certify all of the costs that went through the TID, and then that has to get filed. Another report has to get filed with the DOR on top of that. So a lot of reporting stuff that we still have to do. Once the reports are done, I'll share those with this committee as well, just so you can see the final results of the TID. But overall, it was a very successful TID. You know, it's a classic use of investment in the community, the different projects that we're able to do, and then you can see a whole part of the community that is new now and that has grown and developed because of that investment. So, great example.
Very good. Discussion. Alder Gerhart.
I just have a quick question about in terms of the tax impact later in the year. So I'm thinking of that great graphic you put together, which it's the tax burden for the average household, and it lists out all the different costs and how much of the tax is going to each of those things. And so there's always a part that's tax incremental district. Do you expect that portion to drop this year because of the closure of this TID? Obviously, I know it varies depending on things, but like generally speaking, would we expect to see like a relatively significant drop given the closing of the size of this TID?
In general, yes, because this is our second largest TID of all of them, and that closing will make a pretty significant impact. And then the levy limit adjustment that we're able to take, we talked about that with the 2022 budget, that's for approximately half of it. So half of the benefit of the TID closure can be actually spent through our operating budget. The other half goes to property tax lowering. So in theory, yes, all else equal.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to ask a bit of a different question. I don't have the map up in front of me, but when there's a TID, this is kind of digressing for a moment, but if there's an amendment to a TID based on expansion, and when we close a TID, are we closing the entire TID as well as the amendment to expand or whatever, for whatever various reason, there would be an amendment? So when we're closing TID 6, we're closing all of TID 6.
Correct. So we have two ways you could do a boundary amendment that would reduce the size, kind of the opposite of the adding the boundary. So we could have done that, but we are actually closing all of it in its entirety.
So there is some flexibility with other TIDs as well when they're presented to us.
To reduce the boundary?
To reduce the boundary, or if there was an amendment to expand, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Additional questions, discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to item 6G, action item. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-49-22, resolution renaming the council chambers to Francis Huntley Cooper Council Chambers and renaming Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Grant Program to Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Grant Program in recognition of Francis Huntley Cooper. And it's a direct referral.
I move approval.
Approval made by Alder Gerhardt. And Misty, would you like to speak to this as well?
Sure. So my understanding is this resolution is born out of the conversation you guys had at the Committee of the Whole meeting in the past. Reason why it's coming to Finance Committee is there is a small finance impact. It's addressed in the resolution that the about $400 to replace the two signs at each of the doors here at Chambers would be absorbed in the mayor's operating budget. So there's that component there. There's also the proposal under this resolution to change the name of the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative grants. If I may, I do have a small concern about the name change on that one, which is why it's in recognition of this individual instead. My thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is that generally when you have a program like this named after somebody, it implies that the funds were either from them or from the public as a result of that person. But it is very clearly a property tax funded grant program. So just wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of that concern as you're making this vote. There also is an amendment for the ARPA plan. I realize that's not on the agenda today, but to put additional funds into the Healthy Neighborhoods grant through ARPA funds too. And I have a very strong concern about using ARPA funds when it's tied to a person. So just from a public perception and where the money's coming from is what my hesitation is.
Okay. Discussion. Yes, Alder Gerhardt, you have the floor.
I'm curious, I was just wondering if the committee would consider putting this to council without a recommendation, just because I think some of these decisions they're not finance committee decisions, they're kind of the discussion for the council to have. And also, I don't feel like I have a full context for how this came forward because there was no memo associated with it. And you know what I mean? I don't know exactly why it was both the Chambers and the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. I just feel like I'm missing information, and maybe that's just me, and maybe I missed a conversation.
I guess is that what you're proposing?
I guess I kind of want to hear what you think. I'm happy to make a motion, but I'm interested to see if you have the same feel or if it's, I don't know. I just wanted to ask. So before I make a motion, I want to ask.
Alder Wheeler, comments?
Well, I just think the mayor probably has the best information, and I guess it's direct referred, to the council. So, I mean, I don't have any problem just saying yes to this right now, because we will talk about it in council. But I can respect your concerns.
Yeah, I mean, and myself, I don't have a problem as well, but I'm sure the mayor can address some of those concerns that you may have, but if that's what you'd like to bring forth, yeah.
I guess, I mean, the point that Misty made about the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative renaming is to a certain extent a finance committee.
Sure.
It has relation to what because I always see what we do is about finances, and it sounds like there's not a budget amendment associated with this. The budget impact is not significant, but there is a significant. But I mean, that's also something we can bring up at council. But yeah, I don't have all the information, and I wish there was a memo because I kind of want to hear what the background information. But I'm also happy to move it forward too. But there is sort of I feel like we need that discussion about the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative.
Well, and I think we will at council. You can bring it up then as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, either way.
Yeah.
Whatever I guess you would wish you want to do, want to do.
So from a logistics perspective, so it has happened where Finance Committee will just pass something on to council without a recommendation from the Finance Committee. That's perfectly reasonable and allowable. Otherwise, if Finance Committee does want to make a recommendation, you're welcome to do that too. So right now, the motion on the floor is Gabriella's to approve. So you could either vote on that or continue discussion, or you could vote on that approval as is, or you could do a friendly amendment to change it to send it to council without a recommendation.
I would move to make a friendly amendment to send it to council without a recommendation.
Yeah, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. So.
Do you mind doing that as a real amendment instead, since he did it? So friendly is just the person who actually made the friendly.
Got it. Yes, it's an actual amendment.
So if we could do an actual amendment to change it to send to council without a recommendation from Finance Committee.
I would like to make a motion for an amendment to send this to council without a recommendation.
Okay. Yes.
I know, I'm such a stickler.
It's all right. Keep us on track here. So we will vote on the amendment first, correct?
Correct.
All right. So those in favor of the motion, the amendment before us, signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. The amendment passes. So then we will vote on the resolution itself.
So you are now voting on sending it to council without a Finance Committee recommendation.
That's correct, yes. You wanted to hear that from me, did you not? Yes.
You just say yes, what she said is fine.
All right. But now as far as the resolution, or the amendment, so we don't have we don't have to vote on the actual resolution itself. It is with the amendment we've already.
Yeah, now I'm all confused too.
Okay.
How about we just vote again, because when in doubt, let's just vote.
Okay.
So we're gonna vote to send it to council
Without a
without a recommendation.
Without a recommendation.
Yeah.
All right.
I think you're right, I did mess that one up.
At the worst, we vote twice and the same thing.
Just don't change your votes, then it would be a problem.
All right, well, with that said, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. You've got all that down in your notes, right?
Those minutes are gonna be fun.
All right. All right. So that carries for resolution, well, action item 6G, correct? Okay. Moving on to announcements. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 22nd, 2022. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Alder Wheeler. Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye for adjournment.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:23 p.m.